Hello and welcome everyone to the Cluster Puck Podcast, part of the MHRT Network here at Center Ice. I am Nick. Beside me here, as always, is Brit. How are you?
Good. It's been a long weekend of hockey. We had our last summer hockey tournament this weekend. We had about the most intense game that you could ask for in the championship game amongst 9-year-olds. We ended up losing 2-1. So it's been a very intense weekend of hockey. But we got home and we're sick, and now we're back on the mend. So basically just living out the winter during the summer, the usual.
There you go.
On your side of the world.
Great. Just like I said, we were just talking right before we recorded this here, but I was up camping for the weekend. I love going camping, and we had a great time. No cell service, so I didn't have to worry about work, didn't have to worry about anyone bothering me. The only thing that I had to worry about was me and the frantic thing for news for any type of sport, specifically the Avalanche, and I just never got it throughout the weekend, so I just had to hold on for a few days of no notifications, which, like I said, is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because sometimes your anxiety gets the best of you. But and then on Monday we had a concert that we went to.
Yeah, so you guys have been crazy this week.
Whole bunch of stuff. And yesterday was Allie's birthday. We're recording this right now on the 9th, so her birthday was on the 8th, so we celebrated her birthday.
Yeah, and happy birthday to Allie.
Yes, it was wonderful. She got a whole slew of jerseys.
It's a good birthday.
She collects hockey and soccer jerseys, man. So
nice.
I think this time she got a Jake Gensel Pittsburgh Penguins jersey. She really is a Gensel fan. So
I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that we might be Penguins fans next year. My kid, since he was like really little, when we went and watched the Yotes play while we were living in Tucson, he fell in love with the last name Pitlick. We watched them play the Flyers, and he has loved the last name Pitlick. He's wanted to name every dog Pitlick. So now with them acquiring Pitlick in one of the lesser discussed portions of the Erik Karlsson trade, among the 1,000 pieces that were moved, Pitlick with Ehlers, we've got Graves, we have Nieto. They just kind of have a nice little collection of ex-Avs and very
Avalanche 2.0 team going on.
Yeah, the oldest Avs that they could find. They just scooped them up, and all of our
that team continues to get old, man. Crazy stuff.
So yeah, Will Allie in there, and Mac's best friend is also a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, so it hurts a little bit.
Oh, there you go.
Here with his best buddy, yeah.
Oh, fun. Well, before we get started on the show, I just want to remind everyone to like and subscribe, follow the MHRT Network so you can get notified when shows just like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can also subscribe to our show at Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and then the Cluster Puck Podcast on Facebook. Okay, so we have a little laundry list of items that we kind of want to talk about this week. And like I said, because the month of August has been pretty hectic, we're having to do another recorded episode. So unfortunately for you guys, we're not going to be able to have you guys right there participating with us. But don't worry, next episode, we should be right back on track. Before probably another time where we have to push the day, but then that's it. I promise that it's all me, by the way. And Brittany she's ready and available anytime. So,
except for the needed for the most.
That's right. But anyway, thank you very much for bearing with us. By the way, as we get through this, okay. So I guess where do we start from here? I guess let's probably talk about the first one that came up was over the weekend after I had gotten back from camping. I saw an Instagram post with all these Nathan MacKinnon highlights and, just him scoring outrageous goals. They showed stuff from a few years ago, like multiple years ago when he was a rookie, like all types of highlights. And the question was from the NHL, does Nathan MacKinnon hit 115 points on the season? And I thought, well, that would be an awesome thing to say, considering he's, arguably our best player on the team. So I figured, why not? Let's kind of, break open that box and see what truly we think as close watchers of the Avalanche. So I'll go ahead and ask you, Britt. So first off, 115 points is quite the bar, right? He only eclipsed 100 and what did he have? 109 last season.
Right. And then prior to that, he had the painful 99-point season. Just sniffing that 100 points, but not quite there. But yeah, it was at 109. Which is crazy when you consider he had almost nothing like going into January. He scored that in such a time within that. And I'll just go right into mine. I think he definitely can. I think he's certainly got it in him. And I know that this horse has been beat to the end of the world and back, but with him, it's just going to come down to we need a healthy season, a full healthy season. I think he kind of got screwed in our cup run season. It's safe to say that our cup run season has been one of the less enchanting season of his. Unfortunately, when the stars aligned, of course, his star was the only one that seemed to not be in that line. So I really think the thing with McDavid consistently hitting those bigger and higher numbers is they've aligned with him having very healthy seasons, and also Draisaitl continuing to help him perform, even though Draisaitl hasn't necessarily had a healthy season, playing on, virtually one leg through the playoffs. He has been blessed with stability and consistency, and that's what Mac needs. Is he needs the stars to align. You got to come out of the gate strong, and you essentially have to be on a scoring tear through the entire season. You can't do it in these small blips like he's been making up so much, either at the beginning or the end. It's just got to be a full season of productivity. If he has one of those, I really think he can, and especially when you consider last year he missed, it was like 10 to 15 games and still had the best point season of his career, on a team that with historic numbers of missed man games. If we had been healthy, even with his being unhealthy, who knows what he could have done if he himself could have stayed healthy. I think another factor that may take away from it is if the team does get healthy, do you think that could take away from him potentially hitting those? Because the Oilers know that McDavid and Draisaitl are essentially all that they have. That's where everything's going to come. None of it is 5-on-5. I just saw a thing that they posted. I don't know if you saw it, that Nathan MacKinnon was above Connor McDavid in those 5-on-5 goals, or creating scoring chances maybe on 5-on-5. But basically, we're all aware that McDavid, they rely on the power play. They rely on it deeply. And Nathan MacKinnon, I think scoring less goals 5-on-5 is more indicative of a more elite player than someone who scores them all, on the power play. I don't know if you would agree with me, but to me, scoring 5-on-5 goals, that's the hard part in the NHL. That's definitely a much higher bar, a much higher thing to do consistently. I'm curious if the Avs get healthier, will we actually see his numbers go down? Was it because we so desperately needed him and Rance last year that they went up? And if they do go down, is anyone going to be mad about it? Because I feel like it's a stronger indicator of a team that's going to win a Stanley Cup, because even through McDavid's best years, highest record-setting numbers, they're not winning the cup. And that's because you simply cannot rely on one person. So I'm curious if you think he will make it, and if he doesn't, does it matter? Because it might mean better for the team in general. And I'd rather have a cup than Nathan MacKinnon scoring 115 points.
Yep. So I'm going to bust this in two parts, and then I'll give my final verdict. So the first, I guess, question is, ways he will be able to hit 115 points. And you touched on those remarkably, right? Is if there is injuries where he has to kind of be the workhorse of the team by way of assists and goals, the stuff that actually tally what a point is, then I would say yes. If he has the I guess, how do you say, mentality where it's kind of like Nathan MacKinnon has to play hero again type thing. I don't want to call it exactly that, because that almost sounds gloating, but basically where he has to put stuff on his shoulders and actually get stuff done. He's capable of it.
Literally click, where you can tell that he's turning on, and you can watch him literally lift the team on his back. It's amazing.
It's really incredible actually to watch, because it's
Mhm.
just there are times where he tries too hard and it does
Exactly.
equate to mistakes, but when he turns the jets on and that little knob just clicks right on,
Yep.
he turns into a different player. It's pretty incredible. So I would say if he has that capability, which obviously he does, and the team either isn't performing at its best, he has to step in and work extra, or the injuries or whatever, then yes, I say he hits 115 points, no problem. The other question is how we do on the power play. Because
Mhm.
if we get a lot of power play chances, obviously Mikko Rantanen had probably the most fantastic power play from last season.
Yep.
If Nathan MacKinnon gets that, then yeah, again, he hits 115, no problem, because like you alluded to, scoring on the power play, or you said scoring on 5-on-5 is difficult to do. That makes scoring on the power play easier to do.
Right.
So I would say in that sense, yes, he can hit 115 goals. Now, part two to that. How can he not get 115 points? Is if, kind of like with what you said, if the depth shows up,
Right.
if they score goals on their own, because that means that team aspect
Right.
is in effect. That year we won the cup, we had the depth, we had the scoring,
Yeah. So
right?
it's not indicative of the team
Uh-huh.
failing. It means that they're working more
It means that you had an even playing field, top to bottom, right? So that would be the only reason why
where you
Nathan
could give
MacKinnon
them some
wouldn't.
rest time, utilizing load management.
Mm-hmm.
I know we hate that, but giving
Yes,
Nathan MacKinnon a little rest, is that worth, sacrificing
exactly.
the record?
Exactly. So that would be one of the reasons why he wouldn't hit 115 points. Another reason he wouldn't hit 115 is obviously if he got injured, he just wasn't himself, something
Yeah.
like that. But we've seen enough Nathan MacKinnon to know he, even on his worst days, he can do just fine, So, final verdict. Will Nathan MacKinnon hit 115 points? No, I don't think he will, for that exact reason,
Yeah.
for the team. Will he eclipse 100 with this team? Yes, I think he hits 100 even with the depth that we have. And if he doesn't, kind of like with what you said, is it really going to be that bothersome? Because if you say you won the cup, right? That year we won the cup, he had what, 88 points? But
Yeah.
he still had
So
just a
would you
phenomenal
say,
season.
I'll pose this, would you think that Nathan MacKinnon is more likely to hit 115 points or have, say, a 55 goal season? Because I think he is
Mm,
absolutely due for a phenomenal season.
yeah.
With a healthy team, I mean, Nathan MacKinnon clicking entirely health-wise and momentum-wise, along with the team clicking health-wise and momentum-wise, I
Yeah.
think that will lead to a higher points season. I think he's a lot more likely to hit those points, especially if, and I know it's just a huge question mark, if the Drouin experiment works, how some people
Mm-hmm.
are hoping, I think we could see him drawing point after point, but not necessarily goal after goal. I
Yeah.
think that he is more likely to hit
Mm.
the points, the 115 points versus a 55 goal season.
Sure. And that's just it. And again, when I say he won't hit 115 points, that is nothing against him. That is the fact
No.
that we play top to bottom depth
Yep.
hockey, right? He no question, he can hit 115 points in any given season. Like, that's not the
Right.
question. But to go to yours, where what do you hit first? I almost feel like if he hits 55 goals, he hits 115 points. Like, that
Right.
just kind of comes with the 55
Naturally.
goals,
Mhm.
naturally. But by itself, I think you are correct. I feel like he would be more likely to hit 115 points, because I just checked, he was at 111 this last
Yeah.
year, right? So like,
And that was not
clearly
peak
he could
Nathan
hit it.
MacKinnon, but it was also
Yeah.
asking far more than we would like to in order to
Hmm.
not fizzle out in the first round like we alluded to.
Exactly, right? Because that was kind of one thing where that round against the Kraken, it seems like only Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen showed up, and everyone else disappeared, Cale
Right.
Makar included. You know what I mean? Like,
There
you
was
don't
nothing.
like to say it, but at the same time, you ended up using your most, you ended up using your show pig to the extent where he ended up just not being a show pig anymore. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think he needs, I know I say this like I can just do this. he needs to be kind of used in moderation, just like everyone else, right? You don't, obviously with goalies, yeah, you're right. The hot hand, use that one up. That's a different story. But you don't want to try to constantly put that type of stress on Nathan MacKinnon, on Mikko Rantanen, on Cale Makar.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they might burn out toward the end of the season, or in our case, the playoffs.
And I do think if he's going to do it, I think it's going to be in the next 2 years. I don't think he's anywhere near the end of his career, but he's 28, something like that. I mean, he's about at his, and I don't want to say, obviously, we all know that Nathan MacKinnon was not satisfied winning the Stanley Cup. I don't think he'd be satisfied winning the Stanley Cup 5 years in a row until his career is over, and I think he'll still be left unsatisfied. But I think Nathan MacKinnon is someone who operates kind of in that Kadri mentality where when they have a chip on their shoulder, it's more productive than playing happy. Or, you know what I mean? Playing with joy. So I think this year, him coming back, I think he's definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder. That could be a huge factor in what we see out of him, because he was not happy with how last year finished. And I think that's a driving factor than winning the Stanley Cup. So even if we have to see them win the Cup every other year for the next 5 years, that'll do.
Well, and you bring up a good point, because you look at like the Chicago Blackhawks through those, set of 5 years or so, and they won a cup every other year.
Right.
I wonder if it's that type of an idea where you have to have that taste of defeat again in your mouth in order to be like, oh, when we won the cup, it was so much better. And that becomes your new driving force.
Especially now that they've tasted it. I think it's a lot more driving for these guys than
I think so too.
Especially getting bounced in the first round. Because what has the whole talk been? Seattle defeated the Stanley Cup,
their first ever playoff win came against the defending Stanley Cups, and it was like,
wouldn't say they beat
that's us. Hey.
Right. The Avs all knew that they weren't playing the real Avs, but on paper, that's what they did. So the
only thing the other team cares about is the fact that they beat you. They don't care the squad. They just care about the name they beat. So that, like I said, could he hit 115 points this season? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I would just say no, in the hopes that the whole team plays as one group, and everyone kind of pitches in and contributes, and that would be the reason why. Again, nothing on him, but I would like to see the under on that only if the rest of the team pitches in. So,
well, and another thing to take into consideration last year, I'm sorry, I'll be quick on this, but our position is they're not dorking around anymore. The Yotes are ready to go. The Chicago Blackhawks, they're ready to go. We don't have teams tanking for the bottom. It's not a race to the bottom anymore. They're not competing for Bedard. So these teams have to actually try. They've brought Cooley on, and they need to prove to him that it's worth it for him to be there. So the Yotes, who knows what the Ducks are doing? I don't freaking know what the Ducks are doing. But a lot of these teams that we play so often they're going to be in a lot better places than they were before. The Hawks have proved they're adding true talent. They're looking to start winning. So I mean, last year was kind of a place that we could get a lot of easy goals. Unfortunately, we always have goalies play their best against us, but it is going to get harder, but it might prove better for us in the long run to be playing harder teams throughout the season going into the cup. But it's not a feast for goals anymore like it was before.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree. And kind of like with what you alluded to, that all these teams are becoming ready and stuff, the target still is on your back. Even though Vegas had won the Stanley Cup, you are now, again, this was from the odds makers in Vegas, you're still the favorite to win this year.
Yeah.
So it's still that chip on your shoulder, target on your back mentality that you need to have in order to run it back to a championship. Right. Because obviously nothing would hurt more than to go to the Stanley Cup final and lose, but that's where the odds sit again.
And I think it's widely known that Vegas has been flying by the seat of their pants since the moment of inception, while the Avs have a long-term sustainable future core, abiding by the cap. It's not like you have to wonder, are we going to have to get rid of Makar tomorrow in order to not be penalized for being over the cap? I think the Avs are always going to have a target on their back while they have Makar on their team. Everybody knows that the Knights could come out and they just re-signed Aiden Hill. He could come out and just be the AHL goaltender that he's been for however long prior to this. He's not a baby. So I don't think that Vegas carries nearly the weight of respect that the Avs do as far as being a continual contender.
Yeah, and that's not to take away the fact that obviously they won the Stanley Cup, right? They went and earned it themselves. But this, you kind of like with what you said, there's something about a franchise that's been around for a time now in our case, right? You know, it's nothing compared to like the Maple Leafs or Habs or anything like that. But, you know, we've established ourselves and we've gone now through quite a few motions of captaincy transfers and new team goes out and, you know, old team goes out, new team goes in, that type of deal. Vegas is they still have that new car smell to them, right? So it doesn't quite seem fair in my mind that they can just go win the Stanley Cup, go ahead and not be the favorites, get that target off their back, you know, but at the same time, you have to look at the moves that were made over the offseason. And obviously, and in my opinion, the Avalanche got better. So it's, I don't know, it's very flattering to know that we have those odds again, but at the same time, it's like, oh, thanks. You know,
it is nice to have a little weight off our back that now Vegas can be the main discussion, but everybody knows that the Avs are the true heavyweight in that discussion.
Exactly.
We're set up with Joe Sakic and McFarland also are so well known and respected as being
literally the best GM and president literally ever.
Everybody knows where the long term is and that the Avs aren't going away anytime soon. I mean, they're looking at truly turning over into another great, even through this core. So it will be nice to not be the number one topic of discussion, though, because truly Vegas is the returning Stanley Cup champ defenders, but they can just be discussed. I feel like they're going to be a flash in the pan in the long run.
Yeah, could be. So
no bias.
Speaking of, and that's actually a really good way to kind of segue into our next topic. So we talk about these teams, we talk about these players, and you said there are players who are flash in the pan, like you said with Aiden Hill, possibly, right? It could go either way. And then we've talked about Nathan MacKinnon. We've talked about all these other players throughout the league. Let's talk about now, as far as these Avalanche players are concerned, and we can go to whoever we need to talk about, even league-wide if we really want to, about who, I guess, generational versus elite, and where a lot of our players stack, like Rantanen, Makar, Landeskog, McKinnon, all those guys. So I guess, Brit, let's kind of dissect first generational versus elite. Like, what does that mean? Because obviously they're both talking about upper echelon, but there is a difference. What would that difference be?
So to me, it's this is like something that I can argue with myself on a regular basis. I mean, generational, when you consider it once in a generation. So we're talking about, we should grow up with one or two of these people in our, and it's a abused word. And I think that elite, like ultra elite maybe, and I was trying to think of when I was wording that, what's the next best thing to generational? So what makes them, and to me, what differentiates those is elite are the players that are perfecting the game, playing the game perfect, playing the game better, setting records of their own, setting new styles of play. But to me, generational is when a player comes and reshapes the game, that what they do is so beyond elite that they're changing the entire either their position or a particular style. Like when you consider they're changing how the defense plays, or they're changing how a winger plays the game, or how their team approaches the game, or how a system. You can have a generational coach they change the entire idea. I mean, it's different concepts, but when you're changing an entire concept of the game of hockey that's been done since the last generational player, i.e. Wayne Gretzky. Gretzky utilized open space with speed and hockey IQ. He wasn't necessarily, you look at the guy, not the most athletic looking guy ever. It's kind of painful sometimes to look at
Yes.
and think that's the greatest hockey player that ever lived. And you could tell me that he was a car salesman and I would probably believe you, but it's the way that he brought his hockey IQ and changed the game. They changed it in that they changed how penalties were handled because of him, with the 4-on-4 making the coincidental plays 5-on-5, because he had so much open space that they abuse that when they can take a loophole and change the entire game of hockey to where they change how penalties are done, because he was so elite in utilizing that open space that he could score. Just taking two players off the ice, he could score at will, essentially. And that's how he racked up so many points. That's the differentiating factor to me, is are you playing the game at the best the game can be played at right now? Or are you playing it that well that you're also able to change the game, that you can take it and mold it? And I think there's two players on the Avs that could be and will be discussed as generational. I think one will go down as generational, and I think we have many that are up for discussion as far as elite. And I'd like to see who you pick out, because I'm sure, like most things, we agree on who those are.
There you go. But yeah, as far as that definition goes, I think you're spot on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a goalie yourself, but you bring up, for example, the butterfly technique. Right. Originally, it used to be the stand-up kind of hybrid method type deal, where then you'd collapse one way or another. I don't know if I'm botching the old way, but
no, I mean the stand-up and utilizing pure ability to react to a puck, as opposed to going down and being in position and letting the puck hit you. It was reactionary, and that's why it was so much more acrobatic and exciting. But who was it that brought us that butterfly technique? I
wonder if it was a former Avalanche player.
Though some may call him a Hab. We know
where he
goes down in history.
We have his name in our rafters, so yes. I don't care. That would be Patrick Roy, for those of you who were playing trivia along with us. He was the one who kind of, I guess, would you say perfected? I don't know if he invented it, but he sure used it to a point where that became the standard.
Right. He brought it and performed in a way that the other teams thought, we should do this. And he made it a mainstay in the NHL, one that still is a part of our game today. While it's evolved, we've essentially had elite goaltenders come in and play the butterfly the best that it can be played, because when he came in, they were basically maxing out the ability to be a stand-up goalie. The shots are getting hard enough and fast enough that you simply cannot rely on reactionary saves anymore. These goalies they're not watching a puck get to them and then reacting to it. They are in position and going off of they're reading, they know where that puck is going as it leaves the toe of the stick, and they're relying, and that's where these big goaltenders come in, is they're relying on being in position in the butterfly down low with you see the change in pads. The wider pads, and that's part of these generational goaltenders and players. They changed the game. They limited the goalie's pad sizing. They made shoulder pads, leg pads thinner, because they got so good at their craft that they wanted more scoring. So they made the pads smaller. And a lot of that was Patrick Roy, when they realized they could go down in that butterfly and take up so much of the net at a time. It made it not fun, because there wasn't enough scoring. And that's that generational aspect to it, is they're so good at it that they changed the game. And ultimately, they made a reactionary move rules wise. But it's amazing what Patrick Roy did for the game of goaltending. And in his generationalness, I think another thing that he should always be credited for is, I think it's always got to be discussed, that Patrick Roy is the one. Do you recall, you used to pull the goalie with how much time left in the game? One face-off, like when there was like 20 seconds left.
Yeah, like less than a minute,
And seeing, and I think this is part of his like generational coaching, is he changed the way coaches are pulling He was one of the first ones. Do you remember when he pulled the goalie with like 4 minutes left?
4 minutes.
Game? Yes. So he's a maniac. Sometimes it takes an absolute, I don't even know,
shot in the dark,
politically appropriate word. Yeah, just an absolute maniac. But that was his gig, and I think he kind of goes down as a generational mind as far as that goes. But definitely generational goalie. And it's a hard line to draw, but I think Joe Sakic is one of those people, and same with Peter Forsberg. I think Joe Sakic does get in that generational talent because he was such a beautiful combination of IQ, athleticism, speed, great hair, so handsome. But it's sad when you think that even, and this kind of puts it into where I see it, I don't think that Peter Forsberg, I don't know if he necessarily goes down as generational. That's an argument, like it's an argument that can go down, and a lot of the generational talents you'll see are from pretty far back when you've got like Hull, Bobby Orr, and these are just some names to kind of throw it out there to see how Lemieux, I mean, those names are very, 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 very high up there, and being ultra elite is still such a big thing, but there's just a line drawn somewhere. So I don't know. Do you consider Sack in generational?
Well, and that's just it, is, you know, both players can be just phenomenal, right? Like, just to get to the elite level period is not an easy thing to do. Let's make that clear. You have to be the best of the best in order to get there. But generationals only come by once every
Supposedly
years, if that, you know, like every generation, like you said. So that'd be the hard part. It was because, and that's the thing, is just to be in the elites, that means your name is going to the rafters, right? We have 6 of those ourselves.
Right. The elites are like almost guaranteed Hall of Famers, you know, at any point.
Exactly, right? And they're household names that everybody knows, like Gretzky, Yager, Lemieux, you know, stuff like that. Patrick Roy, like we talked about. Generationals that changed their position, how the game is played, rules as far as how the game of hockey is laid down. But that's just it. So in my mind, I think we have at least, and as far as retired numbers, we have 2 of the 6 that, in my mind, fall, I don't want to say easily, but fall pretty easily into the generational talent, and that would be Patrick Roy and Joe Sakic. Everyone else, or I should say 2 others, toe the line. Ray Bourque and Peter Forsberg, and then 2 are elite, but that meaning that they played the game at its peak, at the best of its ability, but weren't quite enough to be in that generational, and that's obviously Adam Foote and Milan Hajduk, right? So, like I said, 6 absolutely brilliant hockey players, right? But like I said, we have 2. We're fortunate to have 2, but that's just it. Is we happen to get lucky. Other teams have never had a generational talent, or, for that matter, an elite play. Now let's kind of, Brit, and you can kind of go back to the retired names, and then we'll talk about present names. But where do you sit on at least the names in the rafters are concerned?
So I think that one of the toughest, so this is a tough discussion already. Obviously, you're going to have your hometown bias, your team. Someone might not even consider Forsberg, and is it a generational talent? That name might not come up, which also might be indicative of that they're not. But I think where it gets even messier beyond finding that defining line is people whose careers were ended early. People like Forsberg. Like, God, if we could have seen it, because I think that Forsberg definitely could have been generational if he had had a fully healthy career. When you consider the whole end of his career was his injury was so bizarre. He had like these overgrown bursa sacs in his feet. I mean, he was essentially new skates. He did everything he could to play longer. He burst his appendix in the middle of play. I mean, the guy never had a proper run, and I think he truly could have been generational. And so those recognitions are probably a lot easier for a person with their team. And so when you consider that at any given time, there should be technically 2 to 3 active generational players. When you consider the span of 10 to 30 years, there could be 2 to 3. And I mean, it's easy right now. We've got Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid. And there's no doubt McDavid is the best hockey player in the world. I think that Makar is quickly coming on the scene as being seen as a possible generational talent if he hasn't already established himself. Exactly. Talent. And that is because Makar has come in from literally the first game on the ice, and he has redefined the defenseman role in not just where it's played. He plays much more of this rover style. He's not locked into that blue line. He's not just a blue line.
Yep.
It's not anymore where you don't have to be an elite skater. He is. When I was growing up, my little brothers, it was all about, we wanted to go to stick handling camps, all about the stick handling. You wanted stick handle like McKinnon. McKinnon is a madman, but now it's all about the skating. These kids want to power skate like Makar. When you watch Makar skate on his edges, if you just go watch some videos, that is hockey IQ and talent and the way. Beautiful. I've said multiple times I want figure skating in the All-Star game because I truly believe that
Makar would win that every year.
In hockey,
he's got the figure skater skates.
That is not an accident. The way the opening of the feet and the rotation of the ankles and what he's doing is hopefully something that's going to be a lot easier on the joints. When you watch McKinnon, I mean, bull in a china shop is about the most like descriptive thing you could describe him as. But McKinnon is there's so much finesse and like his hard stops are so limited with the way that he can skate and his turns. Hopefully this style of skating catches on and stays in and you're seeing it. Kids want to skate like Makar. They want to be Makar. And hopefully it's a lot easier on these bodies. The force of the stops that these guys are stopping so hard, that force on their body is so hard. So he is changing the game single-handedly, changing the defensive roles and the style of skating. I mean, he's had such a big impact in such a short career. It feels like Makar has been with us forever already, but
it has. Yep.
He's a baby and we got him for a long time still. So I think Makar is a generational talent. I think that he's the Stanley Cup. I think winning that really edged him in now, because what do you hear when the Hall of Fame and generational talent things come in is always, well, what is McDavid's biggest detractor? Is that he doesn't have any cups. Well, they've got their cups, so now it's just they got to figure out the rest. And I think that McKinnon is always going to go down in history as the top of the elite. I just don't know that he can etch himself in as generational, short of having a couple of beyond historic point seasons or something to separate himself, which unfortunately has gotten harder with the appearance of Makar, because Makar takes a lot of other space.
Yep, I totally agree. I think as far as I know, I keep reverting back to names in the rafters, right? But that just means they were your franchise's best for a long while, and
right.
for a
It's
reason.
It's constantly compared to.
Exactly, right. And I think as of right now, with this squad that we currently have, I would raise 4 more numbers into the rafters. I would raise number 29. I would raise number 8. I would raise number 92, and I would raise number 96.
Yep.
So again, all of those to me have achieved elite level, right? No, in no ifs, ands, or buts. They when you talk about Avalanche to somebody, just a random hockey fan, they'll point out one of those 4 names just right off the gun, right? As far as generational, though, I am forced to agree with you there. Cale Makar changed the way a blue liner skates. He changed the way a blue liner can produce points and score and stuff. I mean, for crying out loud, his first ever NHL game was a playoff game against Calgary, and he scored a goal, and a nice goal, by the way. But he played in such a manner that was so good that game that people turn their heads, right? If people turn their heads in that type of a debut, you got something, right? So I would put Makar into the generational talent because of the way he has shaped and changed the game. And you even heard Wayne Gretzky himself alluding to him, comparing him to names like other generational talents, like Orr and stuff like that. So he at least goes in there. Now, that being said, there is still time for McKinnon and Rantanen to maybe flip that coin, right? McKinnon is much, much closer, I would say, than Rantanen is.
For sure.
But with Landeskog and everything that's going down with him, you would have had the most damn fine captain in the world, right? But if that injury cuts his career short, it's not fair, and he also could have been one of those things, but if that cuts his career short, then then
especially with the career being cut short. I think generational is something that is a huge indicator of being generational. Is a name that transcends the game of hockey. People know who Bobby Orr is. People know who Wayne Gretzky is. People know who Lemieux is. And when your career is cut short, unfortunately, just your general airtime is cut short. And
exactly,
that part of being generational is being recognized off the ice and beyond diehard hockey fans or even just a big hockey fan. These are names that you don't have to know hockey to know.
Yep, exactly. So, like I said, should Landeskog come back and all that stuff, there is still time for them to continue to etch deeper into their legacy, like McKinnon and Rantanen, have. But I think Makar in his, what is it now, 5 short years has done exactly that. Maybe even less than that. 5 years, I think, is barely what he's been playing, something like that. 4 years. So we have it on the team. Right, we have generational talent on the team. We have elite of the elites,
right? We're very blessed
on the team.
Even consider having 2 possible generational talents.
Exactly, right. And like I said, play style, or excuse me, I shouldn't say play style, but just on ice skating and productivity could literally be the same, right? It's all about how it affected the game of hockey. Right. Kind of like with what you alluded to. Makar was able to do that. McKinnon has played that to the best it can be, but really it's much more difficult for a forward to do that. Let's kind of put that out there, right?
Exactly. Especially when you consider how caveman-esque the defensive position was up until not that long ago. We did not have near the expectations of a defenseman, and now we are essentially utilizing and maximizing every position on the ice for scoring and eliteness. Just McDermott are being pushed out because there is no room for someone who's not forward and offense, even on the defensive position. And that's kind of where that rover mindset comes in, and where you might see McKinnon's numbers go down as he has to become a little more defensive, changing the game, changing the players, even changing the elite players' games.
Yep. Now, like if McKinnon had invented a new type of a slap shot or a new type of a pass or a new type of a, something like that where it caught wind.
He absolutely.
Exactly. Yep. I totally agree. So
Sidney Crosby's backhand, there's not a backhand.
Exactly.
His backhand, he had a backhand that was like 87 miles an hour, 86 miles an hour. It was unreal.
Crazy. And like Ovechkin's slap shot, from what everyone now touts as Ovechkin's office, there's a reason they call it that. He owns that type of ice, and he will hit 99% of those shots. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and like I said, it's nothing to skulk about if you're in the elite of the elites, right? Like that is not easy by any means to get there. But
yeah, so I consider Makar, just to sum it up, and I think we're in agreement here. Makar is generational. McKinnon, I believe there is an elite A and an elite B you could go into. I think McKinnon is that elite A. I think players like Rantanen fall into that elite B. And to me, I consider Landeskog, especially if his career gets cut short, I think they're more of a franchise player section, almost kind of their own, where they're appreciated for what they truly are, more so by their own players, because it's hard for other teams to really understand what Gabe Landeskog brings. Like I said before, other than Jeff Merrick, Landeskog does not get the respect that he deserves. That man is.
That's very true.
His numbers don't matter at all. I mean, they matter, but what he brings everywhere else it makes him a franchise player to me.
Yep,
and
totally
that's where
agree.
you end up with those guys in the rafters that other people won't remember for hundreds of years to come.
But you sure will.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nope, you're absolutely right. So sorry, I was rambling on, but I think that's a great way to put it. A really awesome conversation topic too, because it does open up a whole new question of what next for the game of hockey.
Yeah, and it's really hard to take away your bias, because we watch McKinnon constantly, but
we watch all 4 of them on a day out, day in basis.
Possibly use this into our next segue into our bad guy, because to us, McKinnon is the greatest, most uses his negative energy to be driven, and he's just a hard worker. But to other teams, they may see him as a villain. Would you say? So that's kind of our next discussion we go into. We have seen the Avalanche we've never been a team that gets pushed around. We've got some beautiful people on our team, but they're not pretty boys. Gabe Landeskog truly is one of the grittiest NHL players that people, until he got Kirby Doc down low, I don't think people realize how truly gritty and hard-nosed Gabe Landeskog is. But we have found ourselves getting a bit grittier this year. We brought on McDermott and we kind of had that experiment, and he played a role. He did his job, but we've found ourselves seeking a little bit of a faster, more effective offensively grit in some new players. So I'm curious, who do you think is going to emerge this season as kind of our villain? Because we saw
the team villain.
And I think that there's mental villains and physical villains, and I'm not sure hated more. But there are a lot of people that see Nathan MacKinnon as a villain because he's kind of one of those guys, not to the level of Trouba or Wilson, that if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not, you kind of hate him. But he's kind of a jerk. He really is kind of a jerk. So is he our villain?
He's very defensive about his chickpeas, that's for sure.
That's what I hear. There's such a great meme that I saw the other day. I don't know if I sent it to you, but it still makes me laugh, where it's Nathan MacKinnon walks into the locker room and the team is doing cocaine, and Nathan MacKinnon says that better not be after his,
I had not seen that. No, that's pretty funny. I like that one.
Nathan MacKinnon says it better not be sugar. No, we're good.
So as far as the team's villain, based on their new identity this year, with all the new faces and new fresh meat coming in, obviously Nathan MacKinnon is almost the go-to for everyone, because it's for other people it's like, oh, I hate him because he's so good,
right? And it's magnified by
the fact that your aura and persona is carried a little bit more, blunt and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, do you ever see him smile on the bench? The guy's got he's got a very weird way of expressing joy.
The only time I've seen him smile is when he's doing interviews with Katie Goss. I'm not suggesting anything.
Like you wouldn't. I think we all would.
I mean, I would absolutely be ecstatic to be talking to Katie Goss. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I've ever seen him smile or cackle or anything like that. Everything else, I could spend an entire episode just talking about Nathan MacKinnon's persona. Like his psyche is so just very focused and low, but not depressed. I don't. Anyways,
no, it's just constant drive. He does not. He has no.
He's. It's very game for him, right? Yep. Anyway, so he would be the easy go-to for most people. Well, I am not most people. My villain, and there were two candidates that I was thinking about. I'm gonna be so mad. Maybe there were two candidates. And I'll tell you who the second one was after I name who the winner was. My villain, my developing evil genius, is going to be Ryan Johansson.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. He is a big boy in that 2C position, and he is not afraid to tangle it up with anybody. Right. And he will be the one that'll play those head games and start chirping at people. Now, obviously, that's all on ice. Right. Keep in mind, he's a great guy off the ice.
Right.
But I can see him just getting the game mentality where he plays that mental game. He's the head case for every other team. He'll drop gloves and go with everyone. I don't want to say he replaces Nazem Kadri's legacy per se. He kind of will create his own. But I think Ryan Johansson becomes our villain, where it's like,
right, he's on a redemption story, just like that Kadri.
You don't want to mess with him. He's on a mission. Stay out of his way or pay the consequences type thing. So I'm going to give it to Ryan Johansson. I guess before I say who my other candidate was, I actually want to hear yours first, because it might have been my second candidate.
Who my guy is? So I went over this, and I think the easy answer is Miles Wood, but I don't think that that's the responsible thing to do, because I think they're wanting to break him out of being a bad boy. Yeah. So I think we leash him altogether. So my villain, I kind of went back and forth, and I kind of don't like it, but I really think that the quiet villain on our team is Sir Bo Byram. I feel like If you watch his interactions after
Mm.
every play, that kid talks some crap because everybody has to get it's him and LOC. And I went kind of back
Just
and forth with them.
LOC was the yeah.
Yes, I
That,
don't think LOC
he could
is a
talk, man.
compelling presence enough, but he must talk so much really personal crap that
Yes.
resonates because people are so mad at him and he gets but Bo Byram talks so much. So it kind of scares me because I don't want him, our precious little head injury man. But I really think that he says things that really get under people's skin, and I don't think it even has to be physical. I think that his smack talk makes him a well-known name in the league for somebody that gets under skin. So, and then with him being so good, that just makes it all because that's what's so infuriating about Tom Wilson is like you're such a jerk, but he's productive and he's handsome and he's likable off the ice.
And he just signed a new deal.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that's what I love. I think it's the Tell It Avs It Is that the one guy, I think it's Christian Bolle, his other team is the Caps. And they said that Tom Wilson is going to be the next captain of the Caps. Like he's going to be their heartbeat. So I get it, but that is a lot of money for Tom Wilson. He's not that young. But if they go through a rebuilding, does it really matter what you're paying, the heartbeat of the team? Not really, probably.
Yep, that's very true.
It's more infuriating if you're a jerk and you're also really good at what you do. And I think Bo Byram is going to grow into that.
I hadn't even considered that, to be honest, but now that you say that, that's really good.
Yeah.
And you did mention the name of my second one, and it was Miles Wood.
Yeah, and that's what I've gone back and forth. Are they going to make
that was the other guy? Yep.
Close it up, or are we going to try to just control
that? And that's just it. It's like the Avalanche effect tends to, I don't want to say make guys softer because that's not exactly the right word, but it makes them focused on the actual game of hockey instead of your emotions. You know what I mean?
It's not our identity to live off of.
Your priority shifts on the ice to, cooler heads prevail type deal. But that doesn't mean that a fight won't break out and Miles Wood won't drop gloves with anyone. I fully expect him to.
He's just like, it sounds like he can outskate anyone that's chasing him if he doesn't want to.
That's exactly right. Okay, so be on the lookout this season for Ryan Johansson and Bo Byram for the developing villain stories. We're gonna keep close attention to those. It's gonna be fun. Okay, a couple little items here. One of them we'll go right into, I guess, and that's gonna be our player spotlight.
Well, actually, so I'm thinking, let's save our player spotlight for next week because this one I think will go a little bit longer. Yeah, so we'll skip that one because we've got about 8 minutes left. So we'll save it for next week because it's a good.
We'll save it, but I'm excited. This is going to be fun because he's
my guy.
He is everyone's favorite because when he scores, you can't just help but have a smile on your face, and we'll let you guess who it is.
38 of those games, if that's a big
exactly. But we'll give you a hint. Oh, maybe we don't give him a hint. I don't know. Maybe leave him guessing. Oh, this is all too fun. Okay, so if that's the case, so we'll do player spotlight next week, and we'll keep in mind to keep you guys on. Well, and then again, I guess we are just recording the episode Monday, so there you can wait a few days, right? It's not going to be too big a deal. All right, so if that's the case, we will close today's episode with Hockey 101. And today we're going to discuss shifts. That's with an F, by the way, shifts. So a shift in hockey. I need to make sure because sometimes the mic doesn't pick up everything.
That's fair. You've got close to puck down great though. We have yet to make a big blunder with that.
Yeah, I got pretty close a couple of times on that. So, okay. So shifts in hockey. What do they do? What do they mean? What the heck are they? That is the substitution method. How one player gets on and another player gets off the ice. So a shift is the duration of which one player skates on the ice and participates in the active game, right? Most shifts by one player just at a time are anywhere from a minute to a minute 30, and that's it, right? Now, granted, you will have about 20 maybe shifts in a game.
Unless you're playing beer league, and there's always that one guy that'll take like 20-minute shifts.
Exactly. He just won't get off the ice.
Don't be that
right?
guy. But don't
be that guy.
where you're not
exactly.
stupid and selfish.
Exactly. Yep. Now, most of your shifts, you will have about 20 of them or so, whatever number that ends up being for your top liners, and then 8 or 9 or 10 for your bottom tier guys, or you could spread it evenly. There's different strategies and styles to do it. But that is how a shift works, right? Is it is your allotted time on the ice, right? Kind of like with going to work. It's your 9 to 5, right? You're in charge of that time. That's your shift, right? Same with hockey. Now, how does a player get on and off the ice? Well, hockey is, I think, probably the only sport where you have continual substitutions or shifts in the game. And it happens fast, right? Because, a minute while watching the hockey game, it goes by pretty quick while you're watching it, right? And in the time frame, you will have had upwards of 10 guys switching on and off the ice throughout that minute and a half, right? There is constant shifts happening throughout the game. So typically what happens during a shift is, let's say Nathan MacKinnon's on the ice, right? And the 2C, in our case, Ryan Johansson, he would be on next, right? For the sake of ease, we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4. And say MacKinnon has hit his minute and a half, whatever it is, right? He would then skate toward his bench, right, where all the guys are sat. And he would notion to whoever's going to be behind him, in this case, Ryan Johansson, hey, I'm done. Like, he'll wave his stick, he'll yell, he'll do something to notify his next substitute, so to say, that his shift is going to begin. So as he's getting toward the bench, Ryan Johansson will then hop over the bench, and they will make a seamless transition where MacKinnon gets onto the bench, kind of climbs over that guard, and Ryan Johansson hops off and goes. Now, there is a leeway that they have of about 6 feet. Is that what they said? Supposedly around 6 feet.
Avalanche apparently aren't sure either.
Apparently it's like 6 inches for the Avalanche.
Because the Avs struggle with this mightily.
Exactly, right? So there's a leeway about as soon as he gets to standard 5-6 feet. That's when the new player can
for the bench.
Exactly. Yep. That's when that new player can actually touch blades to the ice and go. And that's kind of where it makes it a nice, just seamless change. There are a couple of times during the game where you cannot bring on new players for substitutes to begin their shift. For example, if you iced the puck, you were the guilty party who iced the puck, you cannot bring a new team on. You have to deal with what they have, but the other team can bring other players on.
It's just where the home ice advantage comes in.
Which is where home ice advantage comes in.
So you can match lines.
Exactly, right? You can do that. That is a good point to bring up. But that is basically the whole idea of a shift. Again, pretty easy to understand. You'll see it a bunch. There is sometimes what's called a wholesale change, which means while the puck is in play, and this still fascinates me to this day, all 5 guys will just rush. They will just beeline it for that bench to get their shift done, and then brand new set of 5 guys. That's all your skaters.
Yeah, generally you're looking to replace 2D or 3 forwards at once. You try to keep your forward lines together, but usually you can have they will strategically switch up some lines and some shift change for specific times. Specific plays, like I said, line matching when you're wanting to get MacKinnon out against a certain forward. So that'll vary, but usually you're trying to keep your 3 forwards and the 2 defense. Those are the lines that so the common term that you'll hear will be whether they're rolling all 4 lines or short shifting or double shifting or skipping a shift. So if a team is rolling all 4 lines, that generally means the first line goes out, second line replaces them, third line replaces them, fourth line replaces them. In the NHL, very rarely are you going to see that. You'll see that the fourth line gets skipped quite often. With the defensive line, there's been times I think Vegas had to only go out with 3 defensive lines entirely at one point, didn't they, to be captain line for one game. So usually the bottom lines aren't going to be seeing as much playing time, but that's kind of what that term means. Or if they're double shifting, it means one person is staying out for another shift, or sometimes you'll see them going out every other shift. It'll change, but that's kind of where that rolling the lines terms come from, which the more often you can roll 4 healthy lines is generally an indicator of a healthy team with a lot of depth, which the Avs had our Stanley Cup season.
Exactly. And keep in mind, it's all during active puck play, right? That does not mean as soon as they have a little watch on their hand, oh, I've overstayed my shift, and they just go when they have the puck, right? You go when the next logical available time is. If you have the puck and you're rushing into your offensive zone, or vice versa, if they got the puck and they're mad rushing it toward you, you're not just going to be like, oh, now's my time to get off and leave it to somebody else. No, you need to play a puck until there is a time where you can either get it, dump it down toward the end and leave, or somewhere where it's not going to be a burden.
You'll see it on like an offensive rush. The defense will change.
Exactly.
The forwards changing on preemptive rush. So
so there will be times throughout the game where you might have like the first line winger, a second line center, and then a third line other winger, or something like that. But that's just so people can actually kind of get the puck play just happened to not play in the right favor at the time. But like I said, just for the traditional sense, minute and a half. That's kind of the idea. So.
And that's, I mean, if you're working your hardest, that is, even an NHL player, that's all your body should be able to handle. Generally, their bodies.
Exactly. Yeah, because if you're going 110% for a minute and a half on skates on the ice and stuff, being hitting other people.
An under-discussed portion of the game, line change and shift changes, how you could go through one game and, even normal scoring games, a lot of times a goal comes on the back of a poor shift change. It's very, very under-discussed part of the game, in the entirety of the game, but poor shift change, bad, sloppy shift changes can really mess up a game quick. Ask a goalie.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
The goalies do not have shift changes if that needs to
be unless there's an injury, an equipment malfunction, or they're just not performing adequately, then they pull it, but they're in there the whole time. So okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode, Britt. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add for this week. So we'll see you guys on Monday. That'll be a live episode. Again, thank you for bearing with us for these kind of few weeks here. They've just scheduling stuff, life gets in the way and stuff like that. But we appreciate you guys for joining us and bearing with us for this time. But we want to thank you guys once again for watching this episode of the Cluster Puck Podcast. We want to remind you guys once again that you can find this show as well as many other shows on the network. Just go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow the MHRT network so you can get notified when shows just like the Cluster Puck Podcast go live. You can also follow us at the Cluster Puck Avs just Cluster Puck Avs on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And then you can follow us on Facebook at the Cluster Puck Podcast. With that being said, we hope you guys have an enjoyable rest of the week. And I think that'll be it, Britt. Let's give them the good old outro. Take care, everyone, and go Avs go.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.